It's what you call mega debt. That's what we've got right now, $30 trillion and counting. Just keep that in perspective, everyone. Think about what that means for all of us, for future generations. This is not sustainable. We've got to find a solution. Hello, welcome to the Trish Regan Show. I am Trish. Portions of today's show are brought to you by Legacy Precious Metals. You know there's never been a better time to invest in precious metals, so visit legacypminvestments.com. Again, that's legacypminvestments.com. Wow. Again, $30 trillion and counting. We found out how much debt we really have. And you know what? It's just going to keep getting worse. I mean, we keep spending. Our lawmakers want to keep on spending. They haven't gotten enough of it. And this doesn't even factor in what the Federal Reserve is doing. So I don't see how this ends very well. I mean, if you don't have the kind of growth to pay your bills, in this case, the $30 trillion worth of bills, then what actually happens? The long-term trajectory gets severely compromised. That's what happens. Meanwhile, you think about all the inflation that's happening right now. You'd have to have a heck of an economy, right, to be able to sustain all this. And yet we're seeing weakness already. I want to point out that factory orders, they have declined in the latest month on record. They actually fell twice as much as anybody had expected in the month of January, down 0.4%. Again, much more than people thought. And the question now is, does that continue? By the way, adjusted for inflation, they fell even more. So if you don't have the growth to keep up with all of this spending, then what really happens? I mean, ultimately, great societies have fallen and failed because they've done exactly this kind of thing. Think about the Roman Empire. I mean, the comparisons that could and should be made are quite real, right? You think about all the military operations we're sending 3,000 more troops over to help out NATO, right? Because somehow we're the policemen for the world, even though, hey, forget about our own border. We take on everyone else's problems. We have an administration that thinks the answer to everything is to just give people more money, just keep giving out handouts and transfer payments and all that sort of thing, whether it even be through the use of reparations. I told you the other day about Lisa Cook, who has just been nominated by Joe Biden to be on the Federal Reserve's Board of Governors. This is somebody who supports reparations. How that would ever work, you got me. But I think what it tells you is that this team in charge right now is all about spending your money however they can for political gain, so much so that they would even politicize an entity that shouldn't be politicized, the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. I mean, church and state, people, okay? Church and state. But they don't believe in that. They don't believe in that. Hey, a quick reminder, guess where I'm going to be on Friday? That would be tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to be over on my Locals channel in my Locals community, trishregan.locals.com. I'm going to be taking all of your questions and I'm going to be commenting on some of your comments. It's going to be a big party. We've got a small little group there and it's been growing and it's just such a wonderful space. There's a real appreciation for one's ability to exercise our First Amendment there. So I love that about Locals. And I also love that we get a chance to, you get a chance anyway, and we get a chance to interact behind the scenes. In fact, I'm posting a video there today for my supporters of the studio that I've got because I just want to bring you sort of behind the curtain, if you would. So please join me on Locals. Again, I'm going to be live there tomorrow. But I want to get back to sort of the long-term fundamental problems that we have here because, look, we've got to think about the future. We've got to think about what our kids are going to be left with, which increasingly looks like a whole lot less. One of my kids said to me the other day, my little one said, "Mom, how am I ever going to afford a house?" And he was sort of noticing, I think, because we were talking about inflation. I talk about inflation a lot at the dinner table. That's one thing my kids better understand. But, how housing prices have gone up, up, up. When I think about how my parents were able to buy their land for such a fraction of anything it's worth today. When I was a baby, I lived in one house growing up. My parents still live in the same house that I lived in growing up. They bought that land for about $6,000 and put up a house all in. It maybe cost them $30,000. And, now the house is worth quite a bit. And you think about the contrast. I mean, back then, $30,000 was kind of like, what an average person could afford, right? And now when I think about the price of that home now, it's out of reach. It's out of sight, especially for new entries into the home market. One of the things that they don't tell you about these inflation numbers is that they don't count housing. So housing isn't even looked at. They decided back in the early 80s, apparently, that housing was just growing at too fast a clip and appreciating too much. And it really skewed the inflation numbers, especially given that they had to raise the cost of living, the cost of living adjustment for government workers and for Social Security checks. So consequently, they just say, okay, well, let's not count housing. Well, we know how much housing has been going up and away. The cost of food. Pretty soon they're going to say, oh, forget about food. We don't need to keep that in there. Or the cost of gas, don't need that in there. Energy prices, all of these things are going up. And so when you look at the read, which is a 7% increase in consumer prices that we've seen the highest really since the early 1980s, that's just part of the story. Because the things that people use, that they consume, whether that be housing, whether that be food, whether that be energy, those prices are going way, way up. And wages are not being raised enough to correspond to those much higher increases in prices. And then when you look at numbers like what we got today in terms of factory orders, it suggests that our economy could be kind of coming upon a stumbling block. Look, fourth quarter GDP numbers, I liked them. They were very, very good. But the sustainability of those numbers, I think, are truly in question. And I say that because I think there was a lot of year-end buying. A lot of companies decided, well, we're gonna build up our inventory levels because we don't know what these prices are going to look like come next year. They're so worried about inflation. And so now, if you don't see the same kind of economic activity, yet you still have the higher prices, then that's like doomsday scenario. You couple that together with the $30 trillion in debt, with no desire to pay it off at any point soon. And I think the long-term fundamentals of this economy look increasingly problematic, making it so much harder, frankly, for new generations, right, to be able to establish any wealth. I compare us often to a banana republic style economy. I mean, thank goodness we're the world's reserve currency, right? If we didn't have that, gosh, I think we'd really be looking Latin American-esque. But because you, again, go back to the fundamentals being so poor on the economic front. We have the benefit of everybody wanting to invest here because we are still the world's reserve currency. But when you peel back all those layers, you find a real big old mess. And so the question is, how long do all these people want to continue investing in the U.S.? And think about the national security concerns as well. I mean, China, we're indebted to China. China's the one buying all that debt. There's a lot of problems there that need to be addressed, but you need somebody smart. And you know what? I hate to say this, but all these people are frankly not that smart. And on top of that, they have political agendas. So it's all about what I can give you if you vote for me, right? Again, very Banana Republic-like. Think about Venezuela. In Venezuela, you get free housing, you get free food if you promise to vote for Nicolas Maduro. You have to sign the petition, the whole bit. And so I hate to think that that's where we're heading. But again, I look at the cost of entry for new people into the housing market. It's next to impossible now. This American dream that we all hold on to, I think, is quickly being eroded, and that's a real problem. So I say this because this is a big, platform for me. It's one of the reasons why I'm happy to have partnered with Legacy Precious Metals, because this is a company that can kind of help you through it. And one of the ways to hedge against all of this, of course, different ways. I mean, you've got to have a diversified portfolio in the equities markets. You've got to, I think, look at real estate investing, whether that be through funds or actually just, land itself or actual real estate yourself. But the other way, and I encourage people to look at even putting up to 5% of their portfolio into things like precious metals. And this is what Legacy Precious Metals can really help you with. I mean, think about just what happened in the last month of the year with, inflation growing 7%. It means that your dollar was worth what, 93 cents? 93 cents? I mean, that's kind of messed up, right? If you think about that one. So inflation kind of becomes a silent killer. It's a hidden tax. It's felt absolutely by everyone. And this administration, with their inability to address this issue and frankly, their lack of caring about this issue, They're making it worse. Inflation is not going to slow down. It's escalating now quite quickly. I have predicted double-digit inflation by spring. So it's one of the reasons you want to look at something like gold, which acts as a hedge to kind of protect your family's wealth. Silver as well is another good way to do it. And you need to take it seriously. You need to take your savings seriously. Oil prices are rising. We've got these supply chain issues. It is a problem. So go to Legacy Precious Metals. This is the company I trust to help navigate this somewhat complex, I mean, it's easy, but it's complex, right? Space of gold. Their number, I'm going to put it on the screen for you if you're watching, is 1-866-589-0560. Again, 1-866-589-0560, legacypminvestments.com. You can give them a call. You can speak to an IRA expert if you want to have your IRA backed in gold, or if you actually want the physical stuff right there in your home yourself. It's one way to try and protect yourself against this mass inflation. But I mean, the sustainability of what we're dealing with, I don't think is there. $30 trillion and counting. I mean, how do we end this? How do we fix this? I think the will really has to come from the people. I'd like to see a little more Tea Party out there, right? Remember the Tea Party, where I think people said, okay, this is enough. This is not something that we can bank on for our future. This is not an environment in which our kids are going to be able to have any kind of success. So all the more reason for you to focus right now on this issue. We've got an election coming up, right? 2022. So let's demand it. Let's demand it from our lawmakers that they pay attention to math. Can anybody in Congress do math? Join me Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern time on Locals. I'm going to be there on my channel, in my community. I would love for you to join. You can become a supporter, help support this show. You can talk directly with me. You can even message me. What do you know? Directly there on Locals, trishregan.locals.com, and I'll see you then.